It was 8:45 a.m. on a Monday morning when the tall glass doors of Zenith Technologies opened, and a man in an old brown coat stepped into the shining lobby. He looked out of place. The floor was spotless white marble. The chandeliers sparkled above, and the walls were lined with LED screens showing the company's recent stock rise. Employees passed by in sleek suits, heels tapping, coffee in hand, heads held high. No one looked at the man. He carried a small cloth bag, and his boots were dusty. He stopped near the elevator and stood silently. One man in a blue tie glanced his way, then muttered to his friend, "Maintenance guy. Bit early for that." The friend chuckled. "Or maybe he's lost. Someone should call security." But the man didn't seem lost. He looked calm, like he belonged there more than anyone. When the elevator opened, he stepped inside with a few young employees. One of them wrinkled her nose at the scent of oil and old leather. "You going to the top floors?" she asked politely. The man simply nodded. She shrugged and looked away. By the time they reached the 31st floor, most had exited. The man stepped out alone. The floor was quiet. This was where the executives worked, people with corner offices, personal assistants, and salaries that could buy small islands. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly combed hair, looked up and stiffened. "Excuse me, sir. This floor is for authorized personnel only." The man smiled faintly. "I'm here to see Mr. Roland Hart." She blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" He shook his head. "Tell him Kareem is here." She paused. That name Kareem, it rang a bell somewhere, but she couldn't place it. Still, something about the way he said it made her pick up. "The phone, sir. Someone named Kareem is here to see you. He says he doesn't have an appointment." There was silence on the line, then a short, annoyed reply. "Never heard of him. Send him away." She relayed the message gently. "I'm sorry, sir. Mr. Hart says." "I heard him," the man said. "Thank you." He turned and walked slowly down the hallway, passing glass offices where people stared at spreadsheets and graphs. At the far end of the corridor, a tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out of his office. Roland Hart, CEO of Zenith, was known for being sharp, decisive, and ruthlessly efficient. He had taken the company from a mid-level tech firm to a global leader in cloud automation, but he was also known for his ego. He glanced at the older man approaching and frowned. "Can I help you?" "Good morning," the man said. "I'm Kareem. I believe we've crossed paths before." Roland smirked. "I doubt that. I would remember." He extended his hand out of politeness. Then, noticing the dirt under the man's nails, he paused, then slowly pulled his hand back. "Actually, no, I don't think we need to shake hands." For a second, the hallway fell silent. A few assistants passing by slowed down. One of them, a young intern named Leela, had just joined 3 weeks ago. She stopped in her tracks. The man named Kareem simply nodded. "As you wish." Roland looked him up and down. "You're not dressed for a business meeting. Are you from building maintenance?" Kareem's smile didn't fade. "Something like that?" "Well," Roland said, checking his watch, "I have a board meeting in 15 minutes, and I don't have time for games. If this is about cleaning schedules or elevator issues, talk to facilities. They're on the 5th floor." Kareem didn't move. "I understand you're a busy man." Roland turned to leave, but then Kareem added, "It's unfortunate. I only wanted to have a brief conversation before the acquisition paperwork is finalized." Roland froze. Slowly, he turned back. "What acquisition?" Kareem reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek silver folder. It looked strange in his rough hands. He held it out. Roland hesitated, then took it. He opened the folder, eyes scanning the first page. His face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, then something close to panic. This isn't real." Kareem said nothing. Roland flipped to the second page. There was a letter from Zenith's own board expressing interest in accepting the offer pending final approval. The offer was from Kareem Capital Holdings. Amount $4 billion. "This is a joke," Roland said. But he didn't sound confident anymore. Leela, the intern, who had watched everything quietly, now moved closer. She had heard that name before. Kareem somewhere in the world of high finance? A shadow name? Billionaire silent partner? She took out her phone and quickly searched. Her eyes widened. The first result, Kareem S., confounder of Kareem Capital, known for secretive multi-billion-dollar acquisitions across Asia, Europe, and North America. Her jaw dropped. She looked at the man in the coat. That was him. Her heart pounded. She turned to Roland. "Sir, he's not a janitor. He owns half of our competitors." Roland turned to her sharply. "Stay out of this." But he was sweating now. He looked back at Kareem, whose expression remained calm. "What do you want?" "Nothing," Kareem said. "Just respect. But it seems even that is too expensive in this building." Roland narrowed his eyes. "You're buying this company? Why? To humiliate me?" "No," Kareem said. "To protect the people under you from your arrogance. I've watched you for a year. I gave you chances. I watched how you treated employees, interns, even your driver." Roland scoffed. "You spied on me?" "No," Kareem replied. "I walked beside you. You just never noticed." Roland clenched his jaw. "This won't happen. I'll fight it." "It's already done," Kareem said quietly. "Your board signs the final paper in 2 hours." I only came here to give you the chance to leave with dignity. Roland's hands shook slightly. You can't just take my life's work. Kareem looked around. You made it your kingdom, but you forgot kingdoms fall when they forget the people. There was a pause. The receptionist, the assistants, Lila, they all stood silently now, staring at the man who had walked in wearing a dusty coat and turned their world upside down. Kareem began walking toward the elevator. Roland stood frozen, still holding the silver folder. As the doors opened, Kareem stepped inside. He looked at Lila and said, "You were the only one who smiled at me. That matters." Then the doors closed. The office was quiet for a full minute. Then Roland threw the folder on the ground and stormed into his office, slamming the door shut. But the silence remained. People began whispering. Someone called legal, someone called the press. In less than 30 minutes, the news would break. Zenith Technologies acquired for $4 billion by a silent billionaire no one had seen coming. But the man they had all seen and ignored had been standing right in front of them the whole time. The silence that followed Kareem's exit wasn't normal. It wasn't the kind of quiet that happens when someone important leaves. It was the kind of silence that crawls into people's hearts, wraps around their pride, and shakes them from. The inside Lila stood frozen in the hallway. Her phone still displayed the article about Kareem Khan. She hadn't even blinked. 1 minute ago, she thought she was just another intern in a place where no one noticed her. Now, she had seen something no one would ever forget. Roland's door slammed shut. People jumped. The receptionist slowly sat down, her fingers trembling. Above the keyboard, a few workers whispered near the water cooler. That was Kareem Khan. No way. He looked like a janitor. He's worth billions. Why would he dress like that? Lila turned and walked quickly toward her desk. She opened her drawer, took out her notebook, and began scribbling everything she remembered. The folder, the conversation, the way Mr. Kareem looked at her when he said, "That matters." She wasn't sure why she was doing it. Maybe she just didn't want to forget that moment. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she had witnessed something bigger than numbers and emails. Downstairs, in the boardroom on the 16th floor, things were moving fast. The board members had just received an encrypted email. Subject line, final acquisition terms, confidential, urgent. Within minutes, 10 powerful men and women were whispering into their phones, their voices sharp and confused. "He's serious. Is this legal? Do we have a choice?" An older man at the head of the table, Mr. Vincent Ellery, chairman of the board, adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly. "We knew this day might come. Kareem's people have been watching us. Watching Roland, we thought we had more time." A young board member leaned forward. "You mean, you knew he might buy us?" Vincent nodded. "Kareem offered to invest in us 2 years ago. Quietly, he asked to remain anonymous. Roland refused. The offer said he didn't need help from ghost investors. And now Vincent said, he's offering 4 times what we're worth. Cash. No loans, no debt, no risk. Why? Someone asked. Why would a man like him want us now? Vincent looked around the table. Because Roland made the company rich. But Kareem wants to make it better. There was silence again. This time, it wasn't fear. It was realization. Vincent stood. The vote will happen in 2 hours. Until then, keep your mouth shut. No leaks. But of course, the leak had already started. An IT worker noticed a change in the company's server logs. A marketing manager saw a sudden block on outgoing press emails. A financial assistant tried to access Roland's system and got denied for the first time in years. By the time Leela sat for lunch in the 4th floor cafeteria, the rumors had exploded. Did you hear? A buyout? That janitor guy is a billionaire. Roland's finished. I heard they're replacing everyone. I heard the interns are getting promoted. Lila didn't speak. She just kept reading article after article about Kareem Khan. His story was blurry. He had no clear origin. Some said he was a former war refugee. Some said he started as a mechanic. Others claimed he once cleaned floors in a government building. But they all agreed on one thing. He had built an empire in silence. Quiet moves, smart timing, respect for workers. Fearless against power, and no photos, no interviews. Just mystery. That made what happened that morning even more surreal. He hadn't come to crush Roland. He hadn't come to show off. He had come in silence, and walked out in silence. But his silence had screamed louder than anything. Upstairs, Roland was pacing his office like a storm ready to explode. His assistant stood nervously by the door. Sir, the press is calling. Ignore them, sir. Your mother is calling. I said, ignore everyone. He turned toward the window. His reflection stared back at him. Sharp suit, $1 million watch, neatly trimmed beard. But behind the glass, he looked like a man who had lost something he didn't even understand. He had built Zenith with iron hands. Fired people for small mistakes. Held meetings where only he could speak. Rejected every offer that wasn't about power. He thought strength was about control. But now, someone had walked in quietly and stolen everything from him without raising his voice. The assistant hesitated. Sir, should I cancel your speech at the investors' dinner tonight? Roland clenched his fists. No, I'll go. I'll speak. They need to see I'm still in charge. The assistant didn't respond. Deep down, she knew he wasn't in charge anymore. Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe across the street from the building, Kareem sat with a cup of plain tea. He looked at the large windows of Zenith with calm eyes. A young man approached, wearing a black suit and holding a laptop. "Sir, the board is about to vote. Do you want to call in?" Kareem shook his head. "They'll do what's right." The assistant nodded. "Do you want us to prepare a statement?" Kareem looked thoughtful. "No need. Let them talk. Let them guess. I didn't buy the company to impress them." "Then why did you buy it?" Kareem sipped his tea. "Because someone once told me I wasn't worth a handshake, and that memory stayed with me. But I didn't come back for revenge. I came to see if anything had changed." The assistant remained silent. He knew what Kareem meant. Years ago, Kareem had been thrown out of that same building for being unpresentable. He had cried in the rain, sitting on the steps. No one had helped. No one had looked, except one intern, a girl named Mina. She had offered him an umbrella. Years later, he found out she was fired the next week for talking to a stranger. That memory had stayed with him too. Now he was back, but not as a stranger. This time, he had power. The kind that didn't need to shout. It only needed to choose. Back in the building, the boardroom doors closed. One by one, the members placed their votes. Yes, yes, yes. One hesitation. Then yes. 11 votes. Unanimous. Kareem Capital Holdings was now the new owner of Zenith Technologies. The legal team began drawing up the final draft. An email was sent. "Mr. Kareem Khan, we welcome you as our new principal stakeholder." The message arrived on Kareem's phone. He didn't even look at it. Instead, he looked at the sky. "Sometimes," he whispered, "life gives you one handshake, one moment, one chance to make someone feel seen." He stood up, left the tea untouched, and walked out of the cafe. The next morning, Roland entered the office at 9 a.m. as usual. But this time, the security guard didn't greet him. The elevator didn't open instantly, and the receptionist didn't smile. Everything felt off. Then he reached his office and found a small white envelope taped to the door. Inside, it was a note. "You may keep your title until Friday. After that, the new leadership begins. Respectfully, Kareem Khan." Roland crushed the paper in his fist, but it was too late. All around him, the company was changing. Screens now showed the Kareem Capital logo. Memos were going out. Emails from HR. Notices of new policies. But the biggest shock came at 10 a.m. when the elevator opened and Lila walked out, wearing a visitor badge marked Special Projects Team. People turned. Whispers started. "That intern, why is she on the 31st floor?" She walked past them, nervous but proud, and reached Kareem's old conference room. Inside sat the legal team and 2 board members. "You've been asked to join the new advisory council," one said. "Mr. Khan noticed your conduct yesterday. He values kindness." Lila couldn't believe it. Her hands shook as she sat down. The room felt heavy. Her throat was dry. But deep inside, something glowed. Not because she was chosen, but because she had chosen right without knowing anyone was watching. That afternoon, the news hit every screen. Janitor turns out to be billionaire, buys company that disrespected him. Social media exploded. Videos were shared. People argued, cried, clapped. But in a small room behind the top floor, Kareem sat alone. No cameras, no applause, just him, and a single note on the table. The note was old, torn at the edges. It was from Mina. Years ago, the intern who gave him the umbrella. It read, "You looked like you needed someone to be kind. I hope you get where you're going." He smiled at the words, folded the paper, and whispered, "I got here, Mina. Thank you." 33 years ago, a boy no older than 10 stood barefoot outside a construction site in Karachi, holding a plastic lunchbox that wasn't his. It belonged to his father, who had forgotten it again in the rush to find work that morning. The boy's name was Kareem. The site was loud, filled with cement, dust, and metal clanging. He wasn't supposed to be there, but he ran after his father anyway, careful not to spill the Rhodian doll packed tightly inside. "Abba," he called. The old man looked back, surprised. "Why are you here?" Kareem held up the lunchbox proudly. "You forgot." His father took the box, smiled weakly, then crouched. "Thank you, beta. Now go before they yell at you." Kareem nodded and turned, but not before noticing something. One of the foremen, a tall man, in a crisp white kurta, was laughing with others. "That your son?" the man asked. His father nodded. "Cute kid. Shame he'll end up cleaning toilets." "Like you?" the others laughed. Kareem didn't understand all the words, but he understood the tone. He saw how his father's eyes dropped. He saw how the smile faded. That moment stayed, and so began the seed of silence in Kareem. From that day on, he watched everything. Not just what people said, but how they said it. How they looked at someone. How they laughed when they thought no one would remember. Kareem grew up poor. He cleaned workshops after school, sold scraps, fixed broken fans. Never asked for anything twice. And always watched. At 19, he left Pakistan with a small suitcase, $20, and a dream too quiet to explain. He worked in warehouses in Dubai, then in garages in Muscat, slept on floors, skipped meals, but he kept learning. Finance, stock markets, coding. languages, whatever books he could find. Then one day, he fixed an air conditioning unit for a small tech firm. The manager there was impressed with how quickly he figured it out. "You ever worked in programming?" he asked. Kareem said no. "You want to try?" That was the turning point. The manager taught him basic code. Kareem stayed nights learning more. By 24, he had written a tool that improved server speeds. The firm used it. Profits rose. He asked for a small raise. They laughed. "You're just the tech guy, don't get greedy." He left that night, with no job, no savings, but with the knowledge that he could build on his own. He started freelance coding, took low-paying jobs online, kept building, and finally, after years of invisible work, someone noticed. A client in Singapore offered to partner. "You handle the tech," he said. "I'll handle the business." Kareem agreed. They launched their first platform cloud-second tool that helped small businesses protect their data. Within 2 years, it was worth $15 million. By then, Kareem had no interest in fame. He stayed silent. His partner handled public events. Kareem built systems from shadows. But he never forgot his father, or the foreman in the white kurta, or the laughter. One day, he returned to Karachi, quietly bought the construction site where his father once worked, built a school there. A sign outside read, "No child's future is dirty," and he left again. By age 36, Kareem had holdings in 8 companies. By 40, he controlled more than 24 firms through silent partnerships. He was on the board of companies that didn't even know he was there, but he always watched, especially companies that mistreated their lowest employees. That's how he found Zenith. He was reading a forum post one night where a janitor wrote about being mocked by an executive while mopping a conference room. The executive, Roland Hart. The post got deleted, but Kareem remembered the name. He began digging. Interviews, meeting notes, employee exit data. He built a full profile. Then he quietly bought shares. 1%, then 5, then 7. By the time he reached 14%, he stopped. He wanted to see the company up close. That's why he walked in last week in an old coat and dusty shoes, just to see, just to confirm. He was offered no welcome, no eye contact, no handshake. It wasn't shocking. It was expected, but it still hurt. Now, as Kareem stood alone in his temporary office at Zenith, looking out at the skyline, his assistant entered quietly. "Sir, media is asking for a comment." "No, the staff is still waiting for your message. They'll see it in the actions." And Roland. Kareem turned. "Still in the building?" "Yes, sir. He's packing up. His final day is Friday." "Let him leave quietly. Should we assign a team to handle the transition?" Kareem thought for a moment. "No, we'll let the interns run it." The assistant blinked. "Sir, every intern gets one task. We let the youngest minds guide this company for 1 week. Just one. I want to see what the future looks like. Understood? And bring me Lila." The intern who smiled. Minutes later, Lila entered, nervous but curious. Kareem gestured for her to sit. "How long have you worked here? 5 weeks? Do you like it?" "I did, until I realized people here only respect suits." Kareem smiled. "That's why I need your help." "Help? We're rebuilding Zenith. Not the buildings. The soul. And I want people who still believe in decency." Lila nodded slowly. "What do you want me to do?" Kareem handed her a small notebook. "This is where I wrote names. People I saw being kind. You'll find them, bring them together. Build something with them." "What a team? A future. Show me what a company looks like when the good people are in charge." Lila held the notebook close. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You're ready. You smiled when no one else did. That's all the proof I need." Lila left the room inspired. For the first time, someone believed in her, not because of her title but because of her heart. Meanwhile, Roland sat alone in his office, surrounded by packed boxes. His nameplate was missing. His monitor had been shut down. Outside his door, no one stood guard anymore. No assistant. No fanfare. He looked at an old photo of himself receiving an award. He was smiling, shaking hands with politicians. Back then, he believed he was building something great. But now, looking back, he couldn't remember a single name of the janitors or interns who walked those halls with him. His legacy was built on numbers, not people. That thought stung more than losing the company. That evening, the news broke. On every major channel. Zenith under new management, mysterious billionaire revealed as former janitor. But Kareem turned off the TV. He had no interest in being known. What mattered now was the culture he would build. One where no one was laughed at, where no one was turned away without a handshake. The next morning, the elevators at Zenith opened to something strange. A small white board was placed in the lobby. On it, a message in bold marker. "If you could change one thing about this company, what would it be?" Underneath, a stack of sticky notes. By noon, the board was full. More lunch breaks, better treatment for cleaning staff, less yelling in meetings. Leaders who listen. Kareem read every note, quietly. He didn't need 100 consultants. He needed honesty, and that was finally flowing again. But the true test was yet to come. Roland hadn't left the building, not yet, and he had one move left, one that could shake the foundation of everything Kareem had built. The clock on the wall read 11:46 a.m. The office lights buzzed softly. Roland Hart sat alone in his nearly empty office, staring at the computer screen in front of him. There were no files open, no emails, nothing to type, just a blank desktop, and his own reflection in the black screen. He had been CEO of Zenith Technologies for over 11 years. Now, with only 2 days left before he was officially out, he had no one to talk to, no one to yell at, no one even to argue with. His assistant hadn't shown up since Monday. His phone hadn't rung once since yesterday. His nameplate was missing from the door, and the few boxes that held his past certificates framed articles. Old paperweights sat stacked in the corner, untouched. Yet Roland wasn't finished, not in his mind, not yet. The company he once built now belonged to a man he had refused to shake hands with, a man who didn't even wear a tie, a man who smiled too calmly and spoke too little, that burned inside him like fire. Roland wasn't the kind to accept humiliation. He wasn't going to walk out with his tail between his legs, and he wasn't going to let Kareem rewrite the story of Zenith without a fight. So he reached under his desk and pulled out a dusty brown file. It had been there for years, hidden just in case. Inside were documents. One of them was a copy of a secret contract signed 9 years ago between Zenith and a lesser-known defense contractor in Eastern Europe, a contract with fine print. One that, if exposed now, could trigger a federal audit. It wasn't illegal, but it was questionable, and Roland knew if the media found it, Kareem's name would get dragged into the mess. The headlines would twist the story. Billionaire janitor buys company with hidden military ties. Even if Kareem had no involvement in the deal, the damage would be done. Reputation mattered in this world. Roland knew that better than anyone. His lips curled into a tight smile as he placed the file into his leather briefcase. One last power move. One final hand to play. Meanwhile, 2 floors below, Leela sat with 4 other interns in a small glass room labeled Special Projects. None of them really understood why they were there. Earlier that morning, a memo had gone out across Zenith's building. It was simple, short, and shocking. The interns will run all internal communication and team coordination for the next 7 days. Full support will be given. Report directly to Mr. Kareem Khan's office. Signed, Kareem K. Some thought it was a joke, others called it insane. But by noon, everything had changed. For the first time, the phone lines were quiet. No one was yelling. Department heads were asking interns for help. Managers were listening. Some older employees smiled for the first time in months. One even brought in cupcakes to the break room, saying, "If we're starting over, might as well do it with sugar." Lila was shocked at how fast the atmosphere had changed. She looked around the glass room. Jamal, the finance intern, was coordinating department schedules. Neha, for marketing, was rewriting the company newsletter with positive employee stories. Mateo, the engineering intern, was mapping out equipment repair timelines that had been ignored for months. And Lila, she had Kareem's small notebook. In her lap, it had over 20 handwritten names, people who had once shown kindness, fairness, or respect. "These are your seeds," Kareem had told her. "Grow something new with them." So she called every person on that list. A janitor named Saeed, who had covered for a sick colleague, a receptionist named Farah, who had once paid for a coworker's taxi, an HR associate, Rena, who had tried to defend an intern before getting transferred to the basement file room. Every single one of them was stunned when Lila said, "You've been noticed. Mr. Kareem wants you to join the culture task team." Most had never heard those words in their entire careers. "You've been noticed." Back in Kareem's temporary office, his assistant entered quietly. "Sir, we have a situation." Roland just left the building with a briefcase. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Kareem looked up slowly. Was he alone? Yes, and he seemed satisfied. Kareem stood up. "Have our legal team prepare a background scan, and send someone to check what documents are missing from his office." Quietly, "You think he'll make a move?" Kareem didn't answer, but deep inside, he knew powerful men didn't go down without noise, especially men like Roland, who had spent their lives controlling everything. Outside, Roland stepped into a black car and instructed the driver to head toward a certain news station across the city. In his mind, he wasn't betraying the company, he was saving his legacy. If he couldn't be remembered as the man who built Zenith, he would be remembered as the man who exposed its secrets. Either way, the story would carry his name. As the car moved through traffic, he opened the brown file and read the papers again. There it was, a signed document, a transaction for data sharing with classified partners. Back then, it had been swept under the rug. But in today's media climate, it could be explosive. His fingers tapped the briefcase. His eyes were cold. Back at Zenith, Kareem sat quietly in the cafeteria. No one noticed him. No one realized the man drinking plain tea in the corner booth owned the entire company. He liked it that way. A woman approached with a tray, paused, then slowly sat across from him. It was Farah, the receptionist. "Mr. Khan?" she asked hesitantly. Kareem smiled. "Just Kareem. I wanted to say thank you for seeing us, for remembering us." He looked at her kindly. "I don't forget faces, especially the ones that smiled when others didn't." She nodded, eyes slightly wet. I've worked here 11 years, never got noticed. Until today. That's going to change, Kareem said softly. But it only works if we do it together. Farah looked down at her tray. What if people go back to the old ways? Then we'll remind them what kindness looks like. At that moment, Kareem's phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Roland is heading to Channel 6 News. Confirmed he's carrying old defense contract documents. Intent, likely harmful. Kareem stood. His face remained calm, but his pace quickened as he walked out of the cafeteria. He had 2 hours before Roland went live. 2 hours to stop a storm without firing a bullet. He made one call. Hello, this is Kareem Khan. I need to meet someone from the Federal Regulatory Board. Now? Meanwhile, Roland arrived at the news station, full of confidence. He walked into the building like he owned it. The receptionist blinked. Can I help you? I'm Roland Hart, former CEO of Zenith Technologies. I have information you'll want to see. Within minutes, a senior journalist was shaking his hand. You're making a big claim, Mr. Hart. It's not a claim, it's fact. And it's going to explode once this hits the screen. The journalist opened the folder and began reading. His eyes narrowed. This was signed in 2014. Why reveal it now? Because the man who bought Zenith is sitting on a lie. He'll take your money. Smile in your camera, then walk away while the company crashes. The journalist hesitated. We'll need to verify all of this. You understand? We can't run it without you. Have 30 minutes, Roland. Snapped. After that, I take it to your competitor. Back at Zenith, Kareem walked into a plain conference room where a quiet man in a gray suit waited. The man was from the regulatory board. He was already holding a copy of the same document. Roland had. We received this anonymously 2 hours ago, the man said. It's being reviewed. Kareem nodded. I expected that. Let me be clear, I had no involvement in that contract. I was not part of Zenith at the time. But if you need full transparency, I'll open every document from that period. The official blinked. That's unusual. Not for me, Kareem said. I didn't come here to play politics. I came here to rebuild trust. 30 minutes later, the news station called Kareem's office. Mr. Khan, we were contacted by Mr. Hart. He brought documents claiming wrongdoing at Zenith. Do you have a statement? Kareem simply replied, run the story. But only if you also run my answer. Fully, word for word. That evening, the segment aired. The anchor spoke. Clearly, former Zenith CEO Roland Hart today revealed documents involving past deals under his leadership. While the contracts raised questions, current owner Kareem Khan responded immediately, offering complete transparency and cooperating with regulators. Before the story aired, Mr. Khan was not involved in the contract and has opened an internal investigation to ensure compliance. What makes this story more unique? Mr. Khan was once believed to be a janitor in this very company. Now he owns it, and he's rewriting the rulebook for corporate leadership. Roland watched the screen from his apartment, frozen. His attempt to smear Kareem had backfired. The audience wasn't mocking Kareem, they were praising him. Honesty had beaten ego. Silence had defeated noise. Lila watched too, and smiled. The message was clear. Power didn't belong to those who shouted the loudest, it belonged to those who listened the hardest. The next morning at Zenith Technologies began quietly, but there was a strange energy in the air. Something had changed. Employees who had once walked the hallways with nervous glances and fake smiles were now speaking openly, pausing to greet each other, even laughing. The fear that had ruled the building for years had started to fade. People were waking up to something different, something they couldn't yet explain, but could feel. On the top floor, Kareem stood near a wide window, sipping black tea. His eyes scanned the sunrise outside. Behind him, Leela entered, holding a fresh notebook. Good morning, she said softly. The staff team voted to rename the cafeteria the Commons. They want it to be a shared space again. No ranks, no VIP booths. Kareem smiled. That's a good start. Also, Saeed and Farah are organizing a staff-wide event this Friday. Music, stories, food from all cultures. No business, just connection. Kareem turned. Tell them I'll attend. Quietly though, no speeches of course. Lila hesitated. Are you tired? He looked down. I've just been thinking. Power. It's such a strange thing. Some people chase it their whole lives. Others are handed it. But real power. He looked up. Real power is being trusted. That's harder to earn than money. Downstairs, in a forgotten basement room, Rena, the quiet HR woman who had once stood up for an intern and was demoted for it, opened a dusty filing cabinet. It hadn't been touched in years. Now she had a team of 5 interns beside her. They were cataloging old complaints, exit interviews, and reports that had been ignored under Roland's reign. What they found shocked them. Over 40 complaints about workplace bullying. Dozens of ignored ideas. Brilliant employees who had quietly left because no one listened. All these voices, Rena whispered, and no one ever heard them. Now they will, said Neha the intern, holding up a thick folder labeled dismissed proposals. At the same time, a former intern named Tariq sat in a community center across town. He had once worked at Zenith 5 years ago, and had left in silence after Roland mocked his accent during a boardroom visit. That one insult had killed his confidence. But yesterday, his phone rang. It was Kareem. Tariq, he had said, I read the notes from your old internship. You were brilliant. The design sketch you left behind. We're building it. It's already in prototype. Come see it. Tariq hadn't stopped crying for an hour. Now dressed in a worn suit, he was on his way to Zenith again, not as an intern, as a returning designer, and not through any back door. He had an official badge and his name already on the wall. Across the city, Roland's silence had turned bitter. His phone hadn't rung in 2 days. The media had moved on. People were calling Kareem a visionary. Some even said he might become one of the most influential CEOs in tech history. That hurt Roland more than he could admit. For so long, he believed strength came from fear, that leadership meant control. He couldn't understand how someone like Kareem, quiet, humble, simple, had taken everything he thought he owned. Worse, he had done it without revenge, without hate, just quiet strength. Roland sat alone in his luxury condo, staring at the one photo left on his desk. It was from 20 years ago, the day Zenith was founded. He was smiling. Next to him stood 2 other people. One of them was a young man in a janitor's uniform, Kareem. The other was a woman in a lab coat. Her name was Dr. Yasmin Noor. She was the original mind behind the software that launched Zenith. But Roland had pushed her out before the company went public, and she had vanished from the tech world. He hadn't thought of her in years. Until now. Kareem hadn't forgotten her. That afternoon, Yasmin received a letter hand-delivered. Inside was a note. I never forgot who the real genius was. Come home, KK. Yasmin read it twice, then looked out the window of her small teaching office. Tears filled her eyes. She had spent years teaching underprivileged kids about science, never chasing money, never returning to the world that broke her. But now someone remembered. Someone who had once mopped the very floors she walked on. By Friday morning, the atmosphere inside Zenith was electric. The building smelled of spices, desserts, and fresh bread. Colorful fabrics decorated the hallways. Employees from over a dozen countries brought food from their homes. Music played softly from the open cafeteria. There were no speeches, no announcements, just stories. An old accountant shared how she once escaped war and arrived in the U.S. with one suitcase. An IT technician played a flute song from his village. A quiet woman from admin recited a poem she had written about her mother. Lila walked through the room, stunned by the joy in every face. Kareem stood quietly in the corner, listening, smiling. A young man approached him. Mr. Khan, just Kareem. I'm Tariq. I used to intern here. I never thought I'd be back. Thank you for this. Kareem shook his hand warmly. You belong here. Later that night, after the event, Kareem returned to his office and found a letter on his desk. No envelope. Just a single piece of paper. He opened it. Kareem, you won. Not just the company, but the people. I don't understand your methods, but I see now that I never saw people, only positions. I built walls, you opened doors. I may never be like you, but I can try to be better. Thank you for teaching me a lesson I couldn't buy. Kareem folded the letter gently and placed it in his drawer. He didn't smile. He just closed his eyes for a moment. Outside, Leela stood on the rooftop, looking at the city lights. Jamal and Neha joined her. Do you think this change is real? Neha asked. I think it's just the beginning, Leela said. And it started with a handshake that never happened. Funny, said Jamal. That moment was supposed to be about insult, but it ended up becoming the spark. Leela nodded. Sometimes, when someone refuses to see you, you stop trying to be seen and start becoming Far below them, Janitor Saeed finished cleaning the lower lobby. He wiped the last window with care, then looked at his reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, he didn't see a forgotten man. He saw a part of something. A team. A family. Across the glass, he noticed something at a reflection of someone watching. He turned. Kareem stood there, in silence, hands in pockets. Saeed smiled. Kareem nodded. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Respect had already spoken. Later that weekend, a reporter wrote a story titled, The Company That Got Rebuilt from the Basement Up. The article ended with a simple line, sometimes, the janitor isn't just cleaning the floor. He's preparing the foundation. Back in his small apartment, Roland folded the Zenith Company's shirt he had kept in his closet. He placed it in a box labeled lessons. He wasn't sure what would come next, but for the first time, he didn't feel angry. He felt human. In another part of the city, Yasmin walked into Zenith's new design lab. The team stood and applauded. She hadn't touched code in years, but her fingers remembered. Her mind still sparked. Her heart still beat with vision. And beside her, Kareem simply said, Welcome back, Professor. On Monday morning, the doors of Zenith opened to a line of new interns, chosen not by GPA or family connections, but by heart, grit, and kindness. Among them was a boy who once fixed old computers at a refugee camp, a girl who sold mangoes with her father to pay for school, a young man who had built an app from a public library computer. As they walked in, Leela handed each one a badge with the words, Voice, value, vision, and beside those words, a quiet motto, now etched into every wall: see the invisible, hear the unheard, honor the overlooked. Because the story of Zenith was no longer about boardrooms and suits. It was about second chances, about dignity, about remembering the hands that built the company were just as important as the ones that signed the checks. Kareem stood at the back, watching it all unfold. He thought of the day he stood outside this same building with a mop and a NAMA tag, how Roland had walked past him, how no one had looked twice. He hadn't changed who he was. He had only proven who he always had been. A leader not because of title or wealth, but because he never forgot where he started, and never forgot the people others chose to ignore. A heavy rain poured down outside Zenith's building that Tuesday morning, but inside, there was warmth, laughter, and the smell of cinnamon tea. On the 7th floor, a group of interns huddled around a digital whiteboard, drawing lines and writing big dreams. Their project had a title, Project Voice. It was designed to connect overlooked talent around the world, people without degrees, without networks, but full of ideas. Every person on that team had once been invisible. Now, they were creating something that would change thousands of lives. Kareem walked past the glass door, paused, and smiled. These were the kids Roland never would have hired, and now, they were the reason investors were calling every day. The irony wasn't lost on him. Kareem walked into the executive room where Leela was already seated with a stack of papers. Investor from Tokyo wants to meet in person, she said. New York Times also wants an exclusive on your journey. And a university in London is offering an honorary doctorate. Kareem raised his eyebrow. For what? For being human, she joked. For rebuilding a tech company with empathy. Kareem shook his head. Let's focus on the interns. Their prototype matters more. But behind his quiet tone, Leela sensed something different today. You slept 2 hours last night, she said gently. You think I can't tell? Kareem didn't deny it. Something's coming, he said. I don't know what, but I feel it. Across town, in a cold hotel room, a man opened a leather briefcase. His name was Victor Lang, a powerful corporate fixer. He wasn't just a businessman. He was the man companies hired when they wanted to take someone down silently, legally, and completely. Victor had worked for Roland once before, and now, he was back. But not for Zenith. This time another powerful player had sent him. A billionaire, tech mogul named Harrison Cole. Cole had been watching Zenith's rise with deep discomfort. The new culture Kareem had created based on dignity, empathy, and shared ownership was dangerous to old power. Employees were starting to question things at other firms. Why don't we have a voice? Why don't we own a share of what we build? Why does power look only one way? Harrison didn't like that, and he certainly didn't like that. The world was calling Kareem the soul of Silicon Valley. So, Harrison made a call. Send Victor, he had said coldly. Dig. Break him. And Victor was good at what he did. He didn't need lies. He just needed weaknesses. Something buried, something that could shake Kareem's image. At Zenith, life went on. That afternoon, a quiet ceremony was held in the new cafeteria. Not for a tech launch, not for media, but for Saeed the janitor. It was his final day. He was retiring, after 36 years. But for the first time in Zenith's history, the entire executive team showed up. They brought flowers. Not one, but 3. Interns gave speeches about how Saeed had helped them. One spoke of the time Saeed fixed her flat tire without being asked. Another told how Saeed gave him a winter coat when he didn't have one. When Saeed stood to speak, he shook with emotion. I never thought I'd be thanked, he said. I thought my work was invisible. I used to cry alone when people walked past me like I didn't exist. But today, I don't feel like a janitor. I feel like a pillar. He turned to Kareem. You saw me when no one else did. Thank you. Kareem stood and hugged him. There were no cameras, no headlines, just silence. And tears. But someone was watching from afar. Victor sat in a rental car across the street, binoculars on the building. To clean, he muttered. No one's this perfect. Keep digging. Back inside, Leela approached Kareem. There's a man named Victor Lang, asking questions. About your past, your work history, your immigration records, even your high school records. Kareem didn't flinch. Let him, but why? Because the truth has nothing to hide. But deep inside, something stirred. Kareem knew there were things people might twist. He remembered a time in his early 20s, when he had worked under a false name. Just to survive, he had cleaned kitchens, slept in shelters, even borrowed a fake ID once just to get hired. It wasn't crime, it was survival. But in the wrong hands, twisted headlines could change everything. Still, Kareem chose peace over fear. Truth always wins, he whispered to himself. Meanwhile, in a cafe nearby, Victor finally found what? He was looking for a grainy photo, a janitor's uniform, a pay stub under a different name. He smiled coldly. This will be enough. That night, headlines exploded. CEO of Zenith caught using fake identity in past job. Is Kareem Khan who he says he is? From janitor to fraud, Victor's plan worked. The old world still listened to loud fear before quiet facts. Social media lit up with anger. He lied to get a job. How can we trust him? This is betrayal. Even Kareem's staff panicked. Some begged him to release a public statement, some cried, some resigned. Roland, watching from his couch, whispered, "They'll turn on you, just wait." But Kareem did something no one expected. He didn't run, he didn't attack. He didn't release a statement, he simply called a town hall. Every employee was invited. Cameras were not. That morning, the hall was packed, not just with staff, but with their families, spouses, children. Even Saeed returned. Kareem stood on a small stage, no podium, no teleprompter, just his voice. "Yes," he began. "I used another name once. I lived in fear. I was hungry, I was undocumented, and I was ashamed. Not of who I was, but of how invisible the world made me feel." He paused. The room was still. "I cleaned bathrooms at night and studied during the day. I wasn't trying to cheat anyone. I was trying to survive. And the reason I'm telling you this now is not because I got caught, but because I'm done hiding." His voice trembled. This company, this place was built not by perfect men in suits, but by survivors, by immigrants, by single mothers, by people who were told they weren't enough. And if telling the truth means I lose it all, so be it. But I will never again be afraid of my story. Silence. Then someone stood. It was Rena, from HR. "I also worked under a false name once," she said, "because I was escaping abuse. But Kareem gave me a chance." Then another stood. Then another. People started sharing their pain, their fear, their stories. The room turned into a river of truth, of healing, of community. Later that night, when reporters waited outside for a comment, Kareem said one sentence. "You can't break a man who's already been broken and rebuilt in the fire." The next day, Harrison Cole prepared for victory. But something strange happened. His own employees began sharing their truths on social media. "I worked 2 jobs to afford college. Got laughed at in the interview. I was told I looked wrong for management. No one saw me. Until now." The story backfired. People weren't angry. They were inspired. Across the world, the hashtag #MyKareem story started trending. Millions shared their invisible struggles. For the first time, companies everywhere were forced to look within, to ask, who are we ignoring? Who are we silencing? And Zenith had only grew. Investors who once doubted Kareem now begged to join, not because of profits but because of purpose. Roland watched all this unfold with disbelief. He told the truth and got stronger, he said aloud. How in a dark hotel room, Victor stared at the TV. His plan had failed. Harrison Cole fired him the next morning. Meanwhile, Kareem sat in a quiet garden behind Zenith. Leela joined him. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," he said softly, "because the worst storm came, and I'm still standing." She handed him a letter. This came from the White House. Kareem opened it slowly. It was an invitation to speak to the nation about leadership, about human worth, about rising with truth. Kareem looked up at the sky, the same sky he used to sleep under when he had nowhere to go, and for a moment, his eyes filled with tears, not for the pain he endured, but for the voice he finally found. The morning after the White House letter arrived, Kareem stood in front of his mirror, still holding the envelope. It felt surreal. Years ago, he couldn't even get into a government building without being searched twice. Now, the President of the United States wanted to hear his voice. He ran a hand through his hair and looked at his reflection carefully. "They don't want the businessman," he whispered to himself. "They want the boy who cleaned bathrooms with torn gloves and never gave up." He folded the letter and slid it into his jacket. At Zenith, the energy was different. Since the storm of media attacks, the company had grown stronger. Dozens of people were writing in, sharing their stories: single mothers, disabled veterans, refugees, and people released from prison, all saying one thing: "You gave me hope." The staff had become more than a team, they were a movement. But Roland wasn't finished. From his private office in a distant skyscraper, he watched Zenith's rise with growing disgust. His own company, Arctech, was losing investors every week. People were pulling out of cold corporate giants and turning toward purpose-driven firms. One article even called Roland's business model an outdated fossil. In one meeting, an executive whispered, "Maybe we need to bring Kareem back in some way. The public still loves him." Roland slammed his fist on the table. "He was a janitor," he growled. "A liar. He doesn't belong in boardrooms." But deep down, Roland felt something worse than anger, fear. The man he had humiliated in front of everyone was now a symbol of dignity. And it wasn't just Roland. Across the city, an elite circle of CEOs and power players held a private meeting. One of them said, "If this model spreads shared ownership, emotional transparency, employer-led innovation, we lose control." Another whispered, "We need to offer him a deal, something huge. Make him one of us, then silence him from the inside." So they crafted a plan. Kareem was invited to a prestigious tech summit in San Francisco, a private event attended by only the world's most powerful. The invite said, "Share your vision with the future." He accepted. When he arrived, he was surprised. Unlike Zenith's open and warm culture, this place was cold. Silent men in expensive suits, eyes that judged, whispers that followed him wherever he walked. But Kareem stood tall. He gave his talk in a small hall, only 60 people, but the speech would later reach millions. He spoke of pain, of rejection, of invisible hands doing invisible work. He talked about building not just with code and money, but with kindness. You want to change the future, he said. Start by changing the way you look at the person cleaning your floor. The audience clapped politely, but one man stood after the speech. It was Marshall Wexler, the head of a $20 billion investment group. He smiled. Mr. Khan, what you've built is beautiful, but it could be bigger. Kareem raised an eyebrow. Go on, we want to buy Zenith, Wexler said calmly. Not to destroy it, but to expand it. $1 for billion. Full acquisition, you'll stay on as the face. But we'll handle the systems. The board? The numbers. The room went quiet. Kareem's heart stopped for a second. $4 billion. That was enough to change thousands of lives. He could rebuild schools, fund shelters, create a foundation for invisible workers across the world. But he also knew the truth. If he sold the soul of Zenith, might disappear. Wexler didn't care about the janitor who built software in his free time, or the intern who had once lived in a car. He cared about control. Kareem looked around the room. Men in suits. Cold smiles. He smiled too, but it was different. Let me think about it, he said. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat on the rooftop of Zenith's headquarters, staring at the stars. Lila joined him, bringing 2 cups of hot tea. $4 billion, she said softly. That's insane. I know, he said. But what if I take it, and lose what we are? Then you're not the man I know, she said. And I know you. Kareem laughed gently. You always make it simple. It is simple, she said. Zenith was never about money. It was about being seen, giving voice. You lose that to lose everything. The next morning, Kareem returned to the summit and met Wexler privately. He handed him a note. Wexler opened it. It read, I'd rather be poor with soul than rich with silence. Wexler frowned. You're walking away from billions. Kareem nodded. I didn't build Zenith to impress you. I built it to heal people like me. Word spread quickly. The man who refused $4 billion? Headlines exploded again, but this time, they weren't about his past. They were about his power. CEO turns down fortune to protect company's heart. Not for sale. Why Kareem Khan said no. Even schoolchildren started learning his story in classrooms. Meanwhile, Roland made his final move. He called a secret meeting with Wexler and Harrison Cole. He won't play nice, Roland said. So we destroy him, the old-fashioned way. We go after what he loves, his people. The plan. Poach every major engineer from Zenith. Offer them triple salaries, penthouse apartments, and stock options. It worked. In 1 week, 8 top employees left. The media flipped again. Zenith in trouble after key staff leave. Kareem stayed quiet. He called a company-wide meeting. I won't beg anyone to stay, he said. If money is your dream, I'll even write your recommendation letters myself. But if you believe in this mission, stay and rebuild with me. He expected a few to leave, but what happened stunned everyone. Over 300 employees stayed not because of money, because of belief. One of them, a software engineer named Amir, stood and said, You gave my brother his first job out of prison. I'm not going anywhere. Another, Maria added, I used to cry in my office every day before you took over. You made this place feel like home. I won't sell that for a penthouse. And just like that, Zenith began rebuilding again. But the battle wasn't over. That night, Kareem got a text message. No name, just an address. It said, They're meeting again. This time it's personal. He showed the message to Lila. She looked up. They're planning something worse. Kareem nodded. I have to go. I need to hear what they're saying. With my own ears, Lila hesitated. Then you won't go as Kareem Khan. He frowned. Then who? She opened a box. Inside was an old janitor's uniform. Kareem smiled slowly. Time to disappear again, he whispered. The city was quiet that night, but Kareem's heart pounded like a drum. He hadn't worn a janitor's uniform in years, but the moment he zipped it up, it was like no time had passed. The heavy fabric scratched his neck, the worn shoes pinched his feet, and the scent of bleach brought memories flooding back lonely nights. Ignored greetings, silent tears behind restroom doors. Leela adjusted the name tag on his chest. You sure about this? She whispered. He nodded. If I walk in as the CEO, they'll never let me near that building. But a janitor? He gave a sad smile. They never see janitors. The address from the anonymous text led to a private club, the Marlowe Circle. It was the kind of place that didn't exist on Google. No signs, no social media. Just a brass door with a lion's head handle and a doorman who never spoke. Kareem approached from the alley, pushing an old cart loaded with fake cleaning supplies. A security guard barely glanced at him. Back entrance. You're late, he muttered. Perfect. Kareem slipped inside. The corridor was dimly lit, lined with thick carpet and old oil paintings of long-dead tycoons. He found a utility closet and quickly connected a tiny recording device to his collar, just in case. Then he moved. Down the hall, the door to the main room was cracked open. Inside, the voices of powerful men echoed like ghosts in a chamber. He's not taking the money that changes everything. He's dangerous. People believe in him. If this keeps going, other companies will follow his model. Roland's voice cut through the room. Then we tear him down. We don't just destroy his business, we destroy him, his story, his name, his image. If the world thinks he's a fraud, no one will follow him. Another man spoke. How? He's clean. We've tried. Roland leaned forward. Everyone has a past. If we can't find one, we create one. Kareem's blood ran cold. Someone else added, there's one thing we haven't touched, yet his mother. Silence. Then, she's undocumented, isn't she? Living here quietly for decades. That's illegal. Roland's voice again. Imagine the headline. CEO's mother to be deported for visa fraud, son claims to be a patriot. The public will turn, they always do. Kareem stumbled back, his knees weak. His mother Amira was his light. The one who scrubbed floors beside him when he was 10. The one who made rice and lentils stretch for a week when there was no money. She had sacrificed everything for him, and now they wanted to use her. He turned quickly, slipping down a side hall. But then, a door opened. A man with silver hair stepped out and looked directly at him. Hey, Kareem froze. What are you doing here? Kareem reached for the mop. Cleaning. Got a call about a spill on floor 2. The man narrowed his eyes. I didn't hear anything about that. New guy. Kareem muttered. Sorry, still learning the ropes. The man grunted. Be fast. No noise. He stepped back inside. Kareem exhaled, moved quickly, and left the building. Outside, Leela was waiting in the car. As soon as he got in, he said they're going after Amy. Her eyes widened. What? They're going to deport her? Or at least try to. But she's done nothing wrong. That doesn't matter. They want a headline. A scandal doesn't even have to be true. By the time they returned to Zenith, a storm had begun. Emails, texts, notifications, hundreds of them. A headline was already spreading online. Whistleblower claims Kareem Khan hid mothers. Illegal status investigation opened. He hadn't even told her yet. He raced to her apartment. She opened the door, smiling, her hands dusted with flour from baking roti. Kareem? Beta? Amy, sit down, please. She looked into his eyes and knew something was wrong. He explained. Everything. Every word from that secret meeting. Every threat. But her face remained calm. She placed her hand on his cheek. I didn't raise you to run, she said gently. Let them come. Let the world see how we lived. Let them see my hands. Let them see your heart. He broke down, resting his forehead on her lap like he used to as a child. I can't lose you, he whispered. You won't, she said, because I won't hide. Back at Zenith, Kareem made a decision. He would hold a press conference not to defend himself, but to tell the truth, the whole truth. The next day, the room was packed. Reporters from every major outlet. Cameras rolling. He stepped onto the stage. No notes, just his voice. My mother was born in a village that doesn't exist on most maps. She came here with a bag of clothes and a heart full of hope. She cleaned homes, raised other people's children, learned English one word at a time. She didn't have the right paperwork, but she had the right soul. He paused. You want to arrest her? Fine. You want to deport her? Go ahead, but you'll have to go through me first. Through every person who's ever been invisible. Through every child who watched their mother cry into her pillow at night because the world called her illegal. The room went silent. Then an eruption of claps. The video went viral within minutes. #Stand with Amira. #No one is illegal. #Kareem Khan. Even politicians took sides. One senator said, I may not agree with his business, but I admire his courage. Another added, this is not just about one man. It's about what kind of country we want to be. In the middle of it all, Roland watched in rage. This isn't working, he snapped. The man's a ghost, a myth. We throw stones, and he turns them into bridges. But then, an opportunity. A woman appeared on a popular podcast claiming to be Kareem's former girlfriend. She said he once manipulated her into giving him money when he was broke. I still don't know if he loved me or used me, she said tearfully. It spread fast, but something was wrong. Kareem had never seen this woman before. He looked into it, discovered she was an actress, paid scripted. Now it wasn't just about lies. It was about war. Kareem called his team together. I've stayed silent long enough, he said. It's time we go on offense. They launched a campaign called Invisible Hands. It highlighted the stories of janitors, maids, dishwashers, people across the country who were never seen, yet always needed. Within days, the videos reached 50 million views. Celebrities reposted. Schools invited Zenith leaders to speak. Tide was turning again, but just as hope returned, another message came. This one was different. Handwritten, left at Kareem's doorstep, it said, not everyone is proud of your past. Some of us remember what you did. Soon, the world will too. Kareem stared at the note. His hands trembled. There was something, a moment from long ago. A mistake, a choice he buried deep, one that could destroy everything. He looked at Leela. They find it. She held his hand. Then we face it together. But Kareem knew some truths don't just hurt, they burn. Kareem sat in his dark office at Zenith HQ, holding the letter. The handwriting was familiar. Too familiar? But it couldn't be. He hadn't seen that name in 15 years. Leela entered quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. Still no sleep. He shook his head. Lila, This handwriting, I think it's from someone I used to know, back when I lived in the shelter. His name was Ray. She sat beside him, concerned. Was he dangerous? Kareem looked down. Not at first. He was like a big brother to me. Taught me how to survive. But one night, something happened. Something that's been locked inside me all these years. He closed his eyes and remembered. 15 years ago, the coldest winter on record. Kareem and Ray huddled behind a garbage bin near the back of a fast food restaurant. Ray was older, stronger, and meaner when hungry. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. Ray had a plan. Break into the kitchen and steal food. Kareem was scared, but Ray was desperate. It's either this, Ray whispered, or we die out here. Kareem had stood watch while Ray slipped inside through an unlocked door. Alarms never went off, but then the owner showed up early. That there was yelling, glass breaking, and when Ray came running out, he was holding a bloody knife. They hid for days. Then Ray disappeared. Kareem never told anyone. He just kept moving forward. Now someone knew. Someone was threatening to use it. They'll twist it, Kareem whispered. Make it look like I was part of a robbery, or worse. Lila leaned forward. We fight it like always. But first, we find out who really sent this. She traced the envelope's stamp and discovered it came from a tiny town 3 hours away, Millbrook. You want to go there? She asked. Kareem nodded. Tomorrow. The next day, they drove in silence. Millbrook was quiet, almost forgotten by time. One gas station, one diner, one rusting sign that read, Welcome to the heart of nowhere. They parked and walked to the diner. The old woman behind the counter looked up. You're not from around here. No, Kareem said. I'm looking for someone. Ray Porter. Her eyes narrowed. You a cop? No, just an old friend. She pointed toward the hills. Cabin at the edge of town. He doesn't talk to people much. When they reached the cabin, it looked like it hadn't seen paint in years. The porch sagged. A broken mailbox dangled from one screw. Kareem knocked. Silence. He knocked again. Footsteps. Then the door opened. Ray stood there, older, thinner, face worn like leather. Kareem. He didn't smile, just stepped aside. Inside, it smelled of smoke and old memories. You got rich, Ray muttered. Good for you. You sent the letter? Kareem asked. Ray laughed dryly. No, but I knew it would lead you here. Kareem tensed. Why? Ray sat down, lit a cigarette. Because I want something, and I know you'll give it. To protect your little empire. What do you want? I want $5 million. Kareem blinked. What? You owe me. I kept your secret. I disappeared. I took the blame. But now I'm tired of being broke while you're on magazine covers. Kareem stood up. You think this is about money? You think $5 million makes what you did disappear? Ray stood too. You were there? Kareem, don't pretend your hands are clean. I was a scared kid, Kareem said. You dragged me into it. I didn't even go inside. But you didn't stop me. They stared at each other. Years of buried guilt rising to the surface. Kareem turned away. I'm not giving you money. Ray shrugged. Then the media gets my story. And I promise, they'll believe me. Kareem left without another word. In the car, Leela asked, So what now? Kareem stared out the window. Now I tell the truth. Before he does. Back in the city, the pressure was building. News channels were already speculating leaks, anonymous tips. Kareem called for a company-wide town hall live streamed. No script. He stood before thousands. There's something I've never talked about. Something I buried. When I was 17, I was homeless, cold, hungry. I met a man named Ray. We survived together. One night he broke into a restaurant. I stood outside. I was too afraid to stop him. I didn't call the police. I didn't help the owner. I just ran. For years I told myself I didn't do anything wrong. But silence is a choice, and I made the wrong one. He paused. I'm not proud of who I was, but I am proud of who I became. And I share this not to excuse the past, to own it fully. The room stayed silent. But online, comments poured in. We believe in growth. Thank you for your honesty. More leaders should speak like this. Even news anchors praised his courage. Ray tried to release his story, but it fell flat. The world had already heard it from Kareem himself. And then another twist. Leela found out something shocking. She barged into Kareem's office, laptop in hand. I dug into Ray's background. He didn't disappear. He served 5 years. But after that, he was recruited by who? Kareem asked. Private security firm. Funded by Roland. Kareem froze. You mean Roland paid him to come after me? Lila nodded. He's been on their payroll for 2 years. Kareem's jaw clenched. This was never about justice. It was blackmail, a setup. He called his legal team, launched an investigation, released all findings publicly. The backlash against Roland was swift. Investors pulled out. Partners backed away, and then Roland vanished. No public statement. No denial. Just silence. But the war wasn't over. Kareem knew. Roland was hiding, waiting, and the final move was coming. The city looked calm that morning, but Kareem knew better. Behind closed doors, powerful people were panicking. Roland's disappearance after the investigation shocked everyone. Headlines had turned. No longer was Kareem being painted as the man with a past. Now he was the man who exposed $1 billion conspiracy. Still, it didn't feel like a win. He couldn't relax. Not when the man who tried to destroy him had simply vanished. In the top floor conference room, Lila was briefing Kareem and the core team. We've traced Roland's private jet. Last departure was 3 days ago. Destination Zurich. After that, no records. He's off the grid. Any idea why Zurich? Kareem asked. One theory, Lila replied. His offshore accounts? He might be moving assets before we can freeze them. Kareem looked at her. How much damage did he really cause? Lila pulled up a report. We're still calculating, but it's bad. He funded fake employee lawsuits, sabotaged 3 partnerships, and leaked internal data. He wanted Zenith to fall, and he almost succeeded. The legal team entered next. One of the lawyers, a quiet man named Ethan, said, there's another concern. A firm in Geneva, Darkridge Intelligence, they've been flagged in Roland's financials. Private operatives, no ethics. They might still be active. Against who? Kareem asked. Ethan looked uncomfortable. Possibly you, possibly your family. Silence. Lila stood. Then we stop playing defense. We go after him. Kareem nodded slowly. No more running. Within hours, they activated their global contacts. Private investigators, cyber teams, financial analysts. The goal was clear. Expose Roland completely. Freeze his accounts. Bring him back. Meanwhile, media pressure built. Kareem gave honest interviews. Spoke about the sabotage, the attacks, the deception, but the public wanted to know. Why had Roland done it? What had pushed a billionaire CEO to such obsession? Only one person could answer. Roland himself. 3 days later, at 3:40 a.m., Leela burst into Kareem's apartment, phone in hand. He surfaced. Kareem sat up. Where? Not where. How? He just posted a video. Look. She handed him the phone. On screen, Roland sat in an ornate room somewhere in Europe. He looked tired, but his voice was calm. Kareem, he said. You took everything from me. You exposed me, but you don't understand why I came after you, so let me explain. The screen flickered as Roland leaned forward. 30 years ago, my father built a factory, the same factory you worked in as a janitor. You remember, don't you? You were cleaning floors while I sat in the boardroom. We weren't the same. Kareem? Not then, not now. Kareem froze. Lila whispered. He's going back to the beginning. Roland continued. But that day you embarrassed me. In front of everyone, refused to stay in your place. That wasn't just ego. That was legacy. That was power. And you took it from me. But camera zoomed slightly. People think your rise is a story of hard work. But no, it's theft. You stole opportunities meant for better men. Men like me. So I made it my mission to remind the world who you really are. A janitor. With dirty hands. The top video ended. Lila stared at the screen. He's unhinged. But Kareem saw something else. He mentioned his father's factory. That's his weakness. What do you mean? Roland's not just angry. I succeeded. He's angry I changed the system his father built. He thinks it belonged to him. It's personal. The next move came fast. That afternoon, Zenith's stock took a hit. Not because of internal failure, but because of a fake financial leak. Roland's team had uploaded forged documents to a public server. Investors panicked. Kareem called for an emergency broadcast. In front of every employee, shareholder, and journalist watching. He held the fake files in his hand. These numbers are lies. They came from the same man who disappeared when the truth surfaced. Let me show you the real report audited by independent regulators. He displayed the data. For those wondering why I fight so hard, it's because I've seen what happens when lies go unchecked. I was once invisible. I know what it means to have no voice. But today, I stand for everyone who has ever been underestimated. The room erupted in applause. Online support poured in again. But Kareem wasn't done. He looked at Lila. Let's hit back. That night, Kareem recorded his own video. Simple background. Honest voice. Roland, you said I stole what was meant for you, but power isn't inherited. It's earned. You believe your legacy makes you better. I believe actions do. So here's my challenge. You think you can break me? I dare you to face me on live television. 1 hour. No scripts, no handlers. Just you and me. Let the world decide who's worthy. The video exploded online. Hashtags trended. Kareem vs Roland hashtag. Face the Janitor News Networks begged for rights to host the showdown. For 48 hours, Roland said nothing. Then his assistant emailed Kareem's team, one sentence. We accept. The countdown began. The debate was scheduled for Friday night. Worldwide broadcast. 40 million viewers expected. Leela looked at Kareem the night before. You sure about this? Kareem nodded. I've spent my life preparing to be silent. Now, I speak. The next day, the stage was set. 2 podiums, 1 camera. Millions watching. Roland entered first. Expensive suit, cold eyes. Kareem entered second. Calm, steady. The moderator welcomed both. Tonight, no commercials, no interruptions, just truth. The first question, Roland, why target Zenith? Roland smirked. Because it's built on a lie. Kareem replied, Zenith is built on people who were told they'd never matter. Like I was. You attack what you fear. Roland snapped. You made a fool of me in my own company. You shook the foundation. Kareem leaned forward. No. I showed that greatness isn't reserved for the rich. I proved that respect is earned, not bought. The crowd watching from homes and offices began to turn. You could feel it. The moderator asked the final question. If you had one message to the world tonight, what would it be? Roland smiled cruelly. Remember your place. Kareem looked into the camera. My place is where I choose to stand. And tonight, I choose to stand for everyone. Whoever cleaned the floor only to one day walk the stage. Silence, then applause. Online polls lit up. 91% sided with Kareem, but just as the broadcast ended, Leela's phone buzzed. She turned pale. Kareem, it's not over. What is it? He just transferred $2 billion to an unknown shell company, and the company's buying something big. Something dangerous. Kareem stared at her. What did he buy? Lila whispered. I think it's your father's old factory. Kareem's eyes widened, and just like that, everything changed again. The air felt heavy in the boardroom as Kareem stared at the map on the screen. It was a satellite image, grainy but clear enough to see the outline of a large industrial building, weather-beaten, forgotten by most, but not by Kareem, not by Roland. That factory wasn't just any building. It was the place Kareem once mopped floors with hands that bled through cheap gloves. The same place where Roland's father would walk past him like he didn't exist. And now, after decades, Roland had bought it back. Lila's voice broke the silence. The purchase was done through a holding company registered in the Cayman Islands. But there's no doubt, it's him. She paused, then added, he paid $2 billion for it. That factory's not even worth $10 million. Kareem's hands clenched. He doesn't want the building. He wants the memory. He wants to erase mine and rewrite his. Lila looked uneasy. There's more. Construction crews were spotted moving in last night. Armed private security. They've blocked off the perimeter. Kareem stood up slowly. He's turning it into a symbol, his comeback, his territory. The team fell quiet. It wasn't just a building. It was war. The next day, Kareem flew down in a private jet, unannounced. He landed in the same city where he'd once lived in a one-bedroom apartment, walked to work in broken shoes, and slept on a mattress on the floor. Memories returned with every step. But he wasn't that man anymore. Now, when he stepped off the plane, city officials came to greet him. TV cameras followed him. Leela walked beside him. Are you sure about this? Kareem nodded. I need to see it for myself. They drove in silence until the black SUV turned a corner and, there it was, the old factory, but not like you remembered. It had been repainted, polished, cleaned of every sign of wear and tear. It looked new, but it felt cold, soulless. They tried to enter, but a guard in black stopped them. Private property. Turn around. Kareem smiled. Tell Roland. The janitor came back. The guard didn't respond, just closed the gate. That night, as Kareem sat in his hotel room, a message was delivered, handwritten, from Roland. Kareem, I don't need to erase your past, I just need to remind the world of mine. You had your moment. Now watch how a real legacy is rebuilt. I'll see you at the ceremony. The ceremony. Lila frowned. He's holding a public event. Grand reopening. She showed Kareem a flyer tomorrow. Same factory. He's invited media, politicians, investors. He's turning the place into a global tech hub, a symbol of rebirth. Kareem said nothing for a long time. Then he stood and began to pack. We're going, all of us. The next morning, thousands gathered outside the factory. Roland stood on a red carpet stage surrounded by men in suits and women in luxury gowns. Cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions, and then he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, Roland began, this factory once stood as a monument to my family's vision. My father built it. I learned here. And now, I return not just to reopen a building, but to reclaim a legacy. He paused, then continued. In this very place, history was twisted. A janitor tried to rise above his place. But history, like blood, runs pure. And today, we restore it. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but Roland wasn't finished. We're renaming this building. From this day forward, it shall be called the Roland Center for Excellence. Cheers erupted from his loyalists. Then a second noise broke through the crowd, a slow clap. Steady, calm. From the back, Kareem stepped forward. All cameras turned. Roland's smile faded. Kareem climbed the steps and stood face to face with the man who once refused his handshake. He didn't speak to Roland. He spoke to the crowd. This factory taught me pain. It taught me silence. But it also taught me how to endure. I didn't just clean its floors. I learned. I built dreams in secret. He turned to the reporters. This building was my classroom, but not because of what was taught here. Because of what I survived here. The audience was silent. Then Kareem did the unexpected. He pulled out a small box and handed it to a nearby worker. This, he said, is the original badge I wore. Number 0427, a janitor. That was me. People leaned in, curious. You want to name this place after Roland? Kareem continued. That's fine. But let me ask you, who built this empire? A man who inherited it, or the one who rose from its ashes? The tension cut the air like a knife. Roland stepped forward, eyes burning. You think this is your stage? You're still the same floor cleaner. Kareem didn't flinch. And you're still the same boy who couldn't stand that a janitor was smarter than him. Cameras flashed wildly. Then, a voice from the crowd. Let him speak. Another. He earned it. The crowd turned. Momentum shifted. And then one last twist. A woman stepped onto the stage. Elderly, strong eyes, cane in hand. She looked at both men. Then she said softly, I was the secretary here in 1989. I saw both of you. One came early and mopped the bathrooms. The other parked in a reserved spot and shouted at staff. She faced Roland. Your father would be ashamed. Then to Kareem, she whispered, he told me once you were destined for something bigger. He just didn't live long enough to see it. The crowd erupted in applause. Roland stood frozen. Leela handed Kareem a microphone. He raised it slowly. This factory is more than bricks. It's memory. It's proof that no matter where you start, where you end, is yours to choose. He looked at Roland, and I choose to end this. Then he turned to the cameras. Tomorrow morning, Zenith will purchase this property. The deal is already signed. We'll turn it into a training academy for kids from poor backgrounds. For the janitors, the dreamers, the invisible ones. Gasps. Reporters screamed questions. Lila confirmed. Documents have been filed. Kareem's company just acquired Roland's holding firm. He's out. Roland stumbled back. No, you can't. Kareem looked him in the eye. I already did. And just like that, Roland lost everything he tried to rebuild. Kareem stood taller than ever, but just as he stepped off the stage, Leela ran up to him. Kareem, we have a problem. What now? She showed him her phone. A shadowy figure had just entered the city. Someone connected to Roland's last offshore company, an old name no one expected, and they weren't here for business. They were here for revenge. The hotel room was silent except for the steady buzz of Kareem's phone. On the screen, a name blinked that hadn't been seen in years. Lila stared at it. He's alive. Kareem nodded slowly, and he's here. Outside, the hotel window, the skyline glowed, but underneath the lights, something dark moved. Eli Stone wasn't just a businessman. He was the one who taught Roland everything. The one who once ran Kareem out of the city when he refused to play by his corrupt rules. Back then, Kareem was just a janitor. Now he owned the skyline, but Eli was back. Leela locked the door and drew the blinds. He's staying at the Meridian, 3rd floor, same men with him from back then. He wants something. Kareem didn't respond. He stared at the city, thinking about how many nights he had spent praying to get out of this place. And now, all his battles had come home. Let him want, Kareem said finally. But I won't bow this time. The next morning, Kareem walked through the Zenith Academy construction site. The old factory had been stripped down. Workers were installing classrooms where machines used to sit. Hope was being built, brick by brick. But hope doesn't come without enemies. Just as he reached the far side of the lot, he heard a voice from behind. Well, you finally made it. Kareem turned slowly. Eli Stone stood there, older, but still sharp. His suit was spotless, his eyes colder than ever. All this for what? Eli said, walking closer. To play school teacher. Kareem didn't speak. Eli laughed. You think because you bought a few buildings and changed your name on some papers, you've won. You're still a janitor playing king. Kareem smiled calmly. And you're still a coward hiding behind others to do your dirty work. Eli's smile vanished. Careful, he said, stepping closer. Because the people I work with now, they don't care about janitors or kings. They care about control. You've upset the balance. Kareem looked him in the eye. Tell your people the balance has already shifted. Permanently. Eli nodded, almost respectfully. I didn't come to fight you. I came to offer a deal. He held out a folder. Step away. Sell Zenith back to us. Triple what you paid. Walk away with your reputation. We'll keep your name on a plaque. Kareem didn't even touch the folder. You're offering me gold to abandon the kids I built this for. Eli shrugged. I'm offering you peace. Otherwise, we bring the fire. Kareem's face turned hard. I've walked through fire before. You forget I come from it. Eli narrowed his eyes. You think this is a game? This time, we're not just threatening your company. He pulled out another photo. Leela, walking out of the hotel. She's become quite important to you, hasn't she? That's when Kareem moved. Basti grabbed Eli by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Touch her, and you'll wish I stayed a janitor. Eli smiled even while pressed to the concrete. That's the man I remember. Angry? Dangerous? You'll lose everything. Kareem stepped back. Not this time. He walked away. Back in the hotel, Kareem gathered his closest team. Lila, Shams, Jordan. They're planning something big, he said. I want every back door sealed, every file locked, and move Leela to a secure location. Lila shook her head. I'm not hiding. Kareem looked at her gently. You're not hiding. You're surviving. We need you for the end. She nodded. Then let's end it. That night, they discovered it. A secret cyber-attic planned by Eli's group. They weren't going to attack Kareem's properties. They were going to hit Zenith's internal scholarship database. Wipe every application. Erase every name. Destroy the proof that Kareem's academy was helping the forgotten. Without records, it would all seem like a stunt. A fake legacy. Leela's fingers flew across the keyboard. They're already in the system. We have 30 minutes. Shams grabbed his laptop. I can block their access, but I'll need someone to manually cut the building's external link. Kareem stood. I'll do it. No, Lila said. You can't go alone. Kareem looked at her. This started with me. Let me end it with me. 15 minutes later, Kareem stood inside the Zenith server room. The old factory's bones still showed in the walls. He moved past old steel beams and rusted ladders to reach the cable room. A red blinking light showed the external connection. He pulled out a knife and sliced the wire. The blinking stopped. But then, so did the lights dot. Everything went dark. A voice echoed in the dark. You never knew when to quit. Kareem froze. It was Eli. In the building, not alone. Two shadows moved toward him. Kareem backed up slowly, heart pounding. Eli stepped into the faint emergency light. You think cutting the cord would stop us? This was never about tech. It was about fear. You should have taken the deal. Kareem stared at him. You're not the future. You're the past clinging to power. Then dash sirens, red and blue. Floodlights blazed through the windows. Voice on the megaphone. Step away from him now. Kareem smiled. You brought fire. I brought the law. Eli's men ran. Police stormed in. Eli tried to flee but was tackled at the door. Kareem stepped outside, blood on his shirt but peace in his heart. Lila ran to him. You're okay? I am now, he said, finally letting himself lean on her shoulder. 2 days later, at the grand opening of the Zenith Academy, hundreds of students gathered, kids from slums, orphanages, small towns, the same kind of places Kareem had once come from. Cameras rolled. Politicians came. But the loudest cheer came when Kareem took the stage. He looked over the crowd and raised a simple badge. Number 0427, the same one he once wore as a janitor. This, he said, was my beginning. And this, he gestured to the academy behind him, is our future. Tears streamed down many faces. Even Leela wiped her eyes. Kareem finished. To everyone who's ever been ignored, laughed at, or rejected, don't break. Build. Your time is coming. Mine came when I least expected it. The crowd rose in applause. And far in the back, an old man in plain clothes stood silently. It was the first factory manager Kareem had worked under. He didn't say a word, just raised a trembling hand and gave Kareem a salute. Kareem noticed and nodded. The janitor had one, not just the company, but the story itself, forever.